An entitled sketchy landlord tries to completely ruin the life of one of his tenants, demanding that this restaurant owner pay thousands of dollars to the landlord, all so he can get out of the building that he's currently renting from. So I decide to step in and get revenge on this landlord, inevitably putting this guy in his place in a way that he literally never saw coming. And I've honestly never been more satisfied getting back at somebody in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so generally speaking, landlords are kind of jerks, and I think this is something that everybody just knows. But if you think residential landlords are bad, they're nothing compared to commercial landlords. Landlords of commercial buildings are some of the cruelest, nastiest people I've ever come across. And this revenge tale is about a commercial landlord and how I dealt with him. So, back in the 90s, sometimes I'd go for lunch at this restaurant in the basement of our building. The place was called The Vault because it had a massive bank vault that had always been there, dating back to the days before the place was turned into a restaurant. The vault was so huge that they could seat a couple of tables in there, and you could eat dinner surrounded by rows of old gleaming safe deposit boxes. One day, I was there for lunch and the owner took me inside. The guy said to me, "The landlord is driving me nuts." But I said, well, the landlord is driving everybody nuts. For reference, I was a subtenant in the same building, sharing space with an older lawyer that we will call Aaron. Aaron is not his real name. And trust me, this landlord was always causing us problems. I had already had a few run-ins with him, and we hated each other on sight. In most jurisdictions, commercial landlords don't need court orders to get you out. Instead, they just change the locks, and you find out about it when you show up and your key doesn't work. Every time our landlord had a dispute with anyone, which was really often, he would always threaten to change the locks. The restaurant owner continued, "He keeps demanding all this stuff for extra rent, and it's really weird because a lot of it is really old." At this point, the restaurant owner showed me a letter, and it showed the landlord had served on him earlier that day. So I looked over the demand and I read a list of expenses for things such as snow removal and parking lot repairs, as well as common area flooring and all kinds of garbage going back for years. I read it all the way to the end, and there it was, the usual clause saying he was going to change the locks if the tenant didn't pay this and do that. I then asked him and I said, "From the wording of the demand, it looks like you've been fighting this for a while. Why did you wait before consulting a lawyer?" The guy looked at me and said, "Well, I asked one of the lawyers that I know and he said it was hopeless." He then told me the lawyer's name, and it was a guy that I knew from a really awful estate practice who basically resorted to taking little legal aid cases just to keep the lights on when the market tanked in '89. I then asked him, "Well, did you do something to make the landlord hate you? Because this is a bit over the top, even for jerk landlords." He then told me that this guy knows that he's moving his restaurant, and the landlord thinks that now's the time to grab as much money as possible before he goes. And to top it all off, he's getting all this grief over the vault inside the restaurant. So I asked him, "Oh, he won't let you take it with you?" But this guy said to me, "Are you kidding? It weighs almost 100 tons, and I definitely don't need it. But the lease says I have to remove it, and that I also have to restore the building to what it was before there was a vault. So that's gonna cost me a fortune. He says if I leave the vault behind when I move, he'll sue me." So I tell him to send his lease up to my office and I'll look it over. And once I finished my lunch and got back to my office, the lease was waiting for me there. And you know what? It was just as bad as the restaurant owner said. The lease was like a series of renewals and agreements, all based off of original documents, dating all the way back shortly after World War II, when a bank first leased the place and the vault was installed. Somehow, the landlord had suckered the restaurant into taking over a lease that basically left him liable to remove a bank vault at the end of term. But I thought to myself, okay, this is no big deal. The restaurant can default, and all the landlord can do is sue a shell company. But when I got to the last page of the lease, there was a guarantee clause. The restaurant owner had personally guaranteed the lease, and he was on the hook for removing a vault weighing 100 tons and then fixing the place up. So yeah, this really would cost a fortune. I mean, the case was hopeless, of course. I mean, that was obvious right away. But then I thought about the jerk landlord and all of his demands and his threats and the rent hikes, and I asked my brain to do me a solid, which I promptly did. So I picked up the phone and I called the restaurant owner. He says to me, "I'm screwed, right? I mean, you're calling me to say there's no way out. I mean, that's what the commercial lawyer said to me, but I just had to ask." I said to him, "Listen, I can save you, but it's gonna cost some money." The guy asked me how much, and I explained that it's gonna cost $5,000 in legal fees and another G note for the agent. He then asked me, "Agent? What kind of agent?" And that's when I clarified, "I need need a real estate agent. If you send me up a check that's certified, I can take care of the rest. Well, the check hit my desk in less than an hour, and that's when I went to Aaron's office. I said to him, I need a real estate agent. And after clarifying that I'm not buying or selling a house, and after sharing a space with this guy for almost 5 years, he knew that something was going on. He said to me, you're pulling one of your stunts again, aren't you? And I say to him, yes, but it's nothing that will get you in trouble. Aaron looked at me and said, I know a guy. And trust me, Aaron knew all kinds of guys. And that's one of the reasons he eventually got disbarred. But he knew a guy and he gave me the agent's name and number, and the next day I paid the agent a visit. I told him what I needed, and we agreed to the terms as I gave him some papers and the cash for his fee. Fast forward a few days and I was again at the vault for lunch. The owner saw me walk in and greeted me himself. He said to me, the landlord is here. I asked him, wait, he's here? Why? He said to me, oh, for lunch, just to be a jerk. Let's sit in the vault room so I don't have to look at his face. He took me to the vault room, and with the door almost completely closed, we had a consultation while we ate pasta and drank some red wine. I look at the restaurant owner and I say that we're making a demand on the landlord. It was then that I pulled a document out of my briefcase and I passed it to him while I sipped my wine. I said to him, we're demanding that this jerk landlord release all the restaurant equipment and all of its fixtures. The ovens, the freezers, the ventilation, literally everything that you need to run a restaurant. It was then that the restaurant owner said, well, the lease exempts all that stuff. He can't stop me from taking what I want. The only thing matters is the vault, and of course I don't want that. I looked at him and I shook my head. I said, you need the vault, and we're demanding that he release the bank vault as well. We're insisting that he let you take it out within 7 business days. Now, the restaurant owner at this point really did not believe me. He said to me, do you really think you can be the landlord with reverse psychology? Do you really think if you treat him like a 2-year-old, you can manipulate him into doing what you want? But I said to him, well, we'll find out soon. He's had the demand for a few days now. At this point, the restaurant owner dropped his wine glass and it shattered on the marble floor. He then said to me, wait, you already gave it to him? And when he said this, he got up, swung open the vault door, and called for the waiter to clean up the mess. It was then, once the vault door was opened, that I said to the restaurant owner, okay, let's see what the landlord has to say. And it was then that I walked over to the landlord's table. Now, the landlord in question was a big, beefy man with a big appetite. He sat alone, eating wolfishly and with his hands. I looked at him and I said, my client needs an answer today. The landlord looked up at me as he chewed noisily. I said to him, I'm the vault's lawyer. I gave you a demand the other day and my client needs an answer right now. He needs the vault for his new place and he's got to make arrangements. The landlord says to me, your client can forget about the bank vault. And he said this while he wiped his massive greasy hands on an already soiled napkin. I said to him, you can't do that. Now, my shock was feigned, but the restaurant owner's jaw dropped for real. The landlord then laughed at us. I'm the landlord. I could do whatever I want. I said to him, okay, well, I'm gonna need that in writing because my client might sue you. Sue all you like, the landlord told me. Sue till you're blue in the face. He then told me that I would have a formal response by the end of the day, and then he told me to go away and let him finish his lunch. When the letter arrived from the landlord, claiming ownership over the bank vault, I brought it downstairs and I showed it to my client. And trust me when I say this, my client was absolutely blown away. He said, how in the world did you do that? But I just looked at him and I said, trade secret. The following month, the restaurant moved out and the place was empty. And that was too bad because I always liked eating at the vault. The restaurant is now at a new location about 20 minutes away. They still call the place the vault and they preserve the vibe of the old place. It was very similar, except they didn't have the bank vault. The bank vault itself, all 100 tons of it, was right where it always had been, right in the basement of the building where I rented space. I showed up for work a little after that when Aaron came looking for me. He said to me, the landlord's looking for you. I say to him, oh yeah, about what? Aaron said to me that this guy is really angry with me because his deal fell through. I ask him, I'm like, deal? What do you mean? He says to me, well, he was supposed to rent the place downstairs to a new tenant, which was a bank or a credit union or something like that, and they were supposed to come in to sign a lease, but they didn't show up. So I looked at Aaron and I said to him, okay, so what's that got to do with me? Which just so happens to be the same thing I said to the landlord when he managed to track me down a couple of days later. I know you were behind this, he said, his jowls quivering. I know it was you. That offer from the agent, it was absolute garbage. Just some kind of trick to make me keep the vault. Also, your client could sneak out of the place and leave a bank vault behind. I'm gonna sue you. It was then that I said that if you're looking for counsel, I think I'm gonna have to declare a conflict. conflict. He then says to me, "I'm gonna sue that restaurant and that agent, and then I'm gonna sue you." And after he said that, he stormed off. But here's the thing, the landlord never sued us. I mean, of course he didn't. He didn't have a contract to sue on, only a vague letter of intent that I had drafted, just enough to hook a greedy landlord who was used to having his way. The offer that he had received was non-binding, incapable of acceptance without the signing of a formal lease, which of course never got signed. When I left Aaron's place a year later, the downstairs was still unoccupied, with a sad for rent sign sitting in the window, which looked like it was starting to fade. And I'm honestly so glad I was able to get back at that landlord who made my friend's life a living nightmare. Yeah, it really does sound like that landlord got exactly what he deserved. Like seriously, what he was trying to do to that restaurant owner was so sketchy. He basically not only tricked him into having that bank vault, but he also nearly tried to make him take it out of the building itself. And that seriously would have cost so much money. So it's really nice that the original poster stepped in and basically saved this guy's life, because otherwise he would be paying literally a small fortune just to have that stupid vault removed. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that she doesn't get to have an opinion about my cooking skills, all because she is poor? Because right now I had a massive falling out with my friends, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my best friend Layla and her partner Ryan were over for dinner this evening. Layla and Ryan are not their real names. I enjoy cooking, and tonight's dish was a seafood pasta with garlic bread and a veggie side dish. Having Layla and Ryan over for dinner is a semi-frequent occurrence, but they typically don't contribute anything to our meals. The reasoning is, for starters, they're struggling financially, and secondly, neither of them are very good at cooking. If they do bring something, it's usually drinks or a store-bought side dish, something like potato salad or mac and cheese or something like that. But even that, in and of itself, is incredibly rare. This has not ever really bothered me, because hanging out is always a good time, and I'm understanding of their financial situation, as well as their preference to not cook. My partner and I live very comfortably and can't afford to feed guests for dinner every so often, so it really has never been an issue until tonight. I usually like to cut shrimp in half when I'm incorporating it into pasta, because I feel it mixes in way better that way. And this is just a personal preference. I don't claim to be a master chef, I just like cooking, and that's the way that I've always done it. Well, Layla really starts getting on my case about not serving the whole shrimp with the pasta. It started out as a lighthearted banter, but quickly became extremely annoying. She would say stuff like, "Oh, someone's feeling stingy tonight. I hope I don't get hungry later. I've never seen pasta served with cut up shrimp before." Now, I eventually got fed up, and I said something along the lines of, "Oh, that's a really interesting take, considering that I know you've never cooked shrimp ever in your life, and you probably can't afford to either. You don't work, Ryan doesn't have a real job. You guys come over here for free food and then complain about it? No, I'm done." And honestly, the way I said this was just word vomit, and it was all followed by a very awkward silence. They very shortly left after that, and I texted Layla an hour later and I apologized for what I said. She apologized as well, but honestly, I'm still really mad. I'm starting to feel like they're freeloaders, and it just feels really icky knowing that they come over here and eat well pretty often, and my partner and I never get anything in return. I know that we're in different financial situations, but there are ways to make an effort without spending a lot of money. Layla suggested that we do dinner again next week, assuming that we're all good after we both apologized. But I responded and basically said, I think I'm gonna pass on that. She then says to me, "Oh, so are we too poor for you now?" And I just responded by saying yes. Now, it's obviously not entirely that, but the whole thing left a bad taste in my mouth. And now I don't even want to talk to her. My partner thinks I'm being harsh, but I honestly don't know, because right now I really feel used. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Okay, seriously, I'm gonna say that everybody kind of sucks in this situation, because not only was Layla's attitude towards you really just weird and very entitled, but also the way you responded to her in both situations really was not okay either. Like, it sounded really bratty and really just rude overall, and I think the both of you really need to figure your stuff out, because I think the both of you really are in the wrong in this scenario. And the fact that you doubled down and basically confirmed that she is too poor for you, in my opinion, is not making any of these matters any better. My entitled manager refuses to allow me to work from home, especially since I had a fever and a sore throat, claiming that this needs to be pre-approved from a manager and that she wasn't willing to let me stay home. So I decided to maliciously comply and instead chose to take a sick day, forcing her to reschedule all of my appointments, all because she was unwilling to let me work from home. And I've honestly never felt better about getting back at this lady in my life. Here's what happened. So this happened at my old job, and I was reminded of it today, so I thought I would share it on the internet. In my old job, we had a great boss and hybrid work. If we had any reason not to come into the office, we would just send him a message, and then an extra remote day would be approved. But unfortunately, he was let go, and we got a boss who was the exact opposite of her predecessor. This happened a few weeks ago after our old boss was let go, and his boss became our new boss. One morning, I wasn't feeling well. I was too sick to travel to the office, but not too sick to work from home. I had a couple of remote meetings with customers, so it was just easier to me to work while being a little sick than try to reschedule. I spoke with my boss on Slack, and our conversation was like this. I said to him, "Good morning, I have a sore throat and a slight fever. I'll be working from home today, so no need to reschedule anything." My boss then said to me, "Our employer handbook clearly states that remote days are Tuesday and Thursday, and exceptions need to be pre-approved by the manager." Now, when I heard this, I was angry. Is she really trying to force me to the office even while I'm sick? I mean, what is her motivation? But then it hit me that it simply doesn't matter. So I say to her, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's true. I have a sore throat and a slight fever. I'm unable to come to the office, so I'm taking a sick day. Could you ask someone to reschedule my meetings with the customers since I'm recovering at home at least for today? The employee handbook states that I can take 3 sick days in a row without a doctor's note, but I'm willing to make an exception if you want to and get one. Is that something that you would want?" After I said this, I was left on red for 10 minutes. She started typing, deleting the text, only to then start typing and then delete it once again. She was active in our chat for the entire 10 minutes until I finally got a response. My boss said to me, "No, that won't be necessary. I'll ask someone to reschedule those meetings. Get well soon." Now, my colleagues almost passed away from laughter when I told them why I'm having a sick day and not just working from home. Now, our boss didn't like me after that, but trust me, the feeling was mutual. I later left that company for a new job, but not before that lady was fired. Wow, how annoying can you possibly get? Like seriously, the original poster is willing to work from home even though they're sick and they have a fever. Like seriously, if you have the option, why not just let them work from home? And it's so funny to me that this boss is trying to quote the handbook and she's like, "Oh, you need manager approval for that." But it's like, lady, you are the manager. You could easily just approve this right now and it could be all done. But instead, she just wanted to be weird about it and have some kind of weird power trip over the situation. So truly, I think the original poster did the right thing, because if she's not willing to let you work from home while sick, then she can deal with rescheduling all of your appointments as you decide to take a sick day. An entitled jerk insults my wife, gets incredibly angry at the bar staff and the servers around him, and eventually gets banned from the restaurant we were going to. And honestly, I'm so glad this guy never gets to come back ever again, because he truly was incredibly obnoxious. Here's what happened. A couple of months ago, my wife and I were at a restaurant sitting at a table behind the bar. Towards the end of the night, a younger guy starts shamelessly hitting on one of the female servers. Well, an entitled jerk next to him was loudly both encouraging the young dude and injecting politics into every single conversation. So after watching all of this go down, we decided to file a complaint with the bartender, who was doing his best to manage the situation diplomatically. After about 30 minutes to an hour, it doesn't stop, and the bartender cuts off the young man and calls the owner. Now, the young guy actually apologizes, while the entitled jerk says something along the lines of, "You're the only one saying that because you have the hots for the server." My wife then leans over and goes, "We've listened to the whole conversation and none of this is appropriate." This entitled jerk then stands up, spins around, and flips off my wife, and then he screams out, "F you." I then stand up and I say that's not appropriate either. As he turns to me, the bartender gets between us. This entitled jerk flips my wife off again and tells her to get lost and to sit back down. The bartender promptly cashed out this entitled jerk and told them both to leave as soon as they were done. Well, this entitled jerk walks out yelling his own name and that he will not be disrespected. A few days ago, we heard that this entitled jerk tried to come back in. The bar manager was working and politely told him he's not welcome in after what happened. So this entitled jerk left without incident, but posted a 1-star review, accusing the bar of over-serving friends and regulars, even though he was a regular, to the point of putting other people in danger. And he claims to have contacted the local liquor authority over this supposed over-serving. Well, the local liquor authority takes these sorts of claims very seriously. So the dude is literally, if he is serious, trying to get the place shut down, all because people just didn't didn't want to deal with his entitled garbage. And honestly, I just hope I never have to deal with him ever again. Yeah, the entitled jerk of this story seriously was crossing so many lines. He was not only encouraging this young guy to hit on this female server, but he was also just being so obnoxious. Like, I know if I was at that bar, or at least in the original poster's shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. I definitely would have reported him and absolutely spoken up the second he tried to lie. And you know for a fact he's only trying to get this place shut down all because he got kicked out. It's not because anything actually bad is happening. It's all because he got put in his place and embarrassed by pretty much everybody around him. And in my opinion, I think the bar did a great job by banning this guy because this guy was clearly not a good person. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.